Welcome to the Brain Aware podcast, where we explore the science of success. On this episode, Dr. Britt Andriotta and Justin Reinert welcome Bob Bednarz, Director of Learning and Development at Advantive. Join us as we discuss Bob's journey in navigating and leading others through change.
Hi, Bob. We're excited to welcome you to our podcast and have a conversation with you today.
Yeah, thanks, Britt. I'm excited to be here.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background. How did you get to where you are now?
Yeah, I'll give you the short version. So my name is Bob Bednarz, and I guess you could say I've been in the training and or talent development world for probably the last 15 plus years. But like a lot of people that get into learning and development, I was an accidental trainer. I didn't know what it was. I did have a mission at one point in college. Me was like, I want to help people develop personally and professionally. So I knew I wanted to do that. I didn't know how to get there or what method to get there. So I did start my career in sales and really got introduced to the sales training, which now widely known as sales enablement. And I'm like, oh, this learning and development seems even better. So this does it on a bigger scale. So the rest is kind of history there of building L&D programs from scratch on global levels, individual levels as well.
Great. Thank you.
So, and it's funny, Bob, thinking about like starting your career in sales, it's a similar path. But I'm curious, thinking back on your career, what is a change initiative that you went through that was either successful or maybe one where there was a lot of struggle?
Yeah, so it's interesting to think about it because a lot of things that I feel like I do on day to day, it's either implementing a change for somebody, whether it's a learning program or we're involved in like a merger or an acquisition that comes to play. So, or maybe it's just like introducing a new process or standard. And I feel like any of those, maybe this is a little too generic or high level, the same questions come up or the same comments come up all the time. Like, is this thing replacing me? Like if there's a new technology system or process, or like, I can do better. I've done it like this for 20 plus years. I know better than the system. So it's more just like, it's the same thing over and over again, just in a different context, whether it's software or somebody coming in and we're acquiring a company, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. How about what's going on right now? Is there a change you're going through right now? And where in that change journey are you?
Yeah. So I'm on a personal change journey. I feel like I'm also leading some. So maybe we can talk about a couple of them, but I did switch companies about 6 or 7 months ago. So that's a big change, even though in this case I had a desire, I had the choice, I wanted to make a change and I went ahead and did it. So we're definitely out of like the stage 1 or into stage 2, stage 3. But what's interesting is anytime you start a new position, a new job, right, there's fluxes in motivation, or like, it's not always like everything's great. Like you get challenges or roadblocks and then the motivation dips. With that, the company I'm working for right now, we're in the process of introducing a lot of new programs and standardization around learning, performance management, how we hire, how we interview. So I'm also a change agent in a lot of ways, and we're bringing people through the process at different points. So some people are definitely in more of that shock denial stage of the change, or they're like a little anger or fear, like, what is this actually happening? We do have some early adopters though, I will say it. Some people that are like running, embracing the change, they're excited to kind of jump in. So I'm definitely playing a variety of different roles. So it's always interesting going on a change journey while you're leading a group of people through it. But I'm also being a trailblazer and making sure that journey is like, we have all the pieces in the puzzle together for all the individual people.
Absolutely. And it sounds like you're juggling both your personal change of starting a new career with a new company and then also leading change within that company and having to get everyone else on board.
100%. Yeah.
So, Bob, I'm curious about some of these, professional changes. You said you were rolling out new performance management and the way that you hire. Which one of those is the most challenging for you right now?
They're both pretty close. Real time, because we're literally in the performance management cycle this week. I'll say that one is because it's very, very real, where we have groups of managers that are first-time managers that have never led a performance review. And then we have some that have led performance reviews in prior companies or through acquisitions, that it's been more of like a cheerleading process versus like a coaching process of how do I develop my people for the future. The other challenge is some people have never had metrics or KPIs. around their role or what they're going to, or how it impacts their bonus. So we're in the process of introducing a lot of different things. And then the icing on the cake is we're standardizing the titles across the company, because there's been a lot of acquisitions over the last 3 years at my current company, like 14 to be specific. So we want to try to make sure that. So our managers, some of them first time managers, are delivering not only here's how to deliver a good performance review and everything you do, but I have to deliver the title changes, your bonus, your compensation, like your merit increases, all in that one conversation. So there's been a lot of work that some of the team has been working day and night and overnight to make sure we have all the pieces in place so that we can enable our managers to deliver this message. And there's no surprises for people.
That's a lot. That's a lot to roll in, especially for a first-time manager to handle.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a lot of flashback because I've gone through a lot of those things. I'm curious about, you talk about performance management and how you've got some people who have prior experience at other companies and then some that are coming in really fresh. How do you bridge that gap when you're managing kind of this rollout of here's this new process and you have, you do your needs analysis and you have people at very different places. How do you approach it so that as you're getting people ready for the change, they all come in at different places, but we can end hopefully at the same successful place?
Yeah. A lot of it, I mean, this is going to sound a very like people leader like type of answer, but it is literally individualized plans are people centric, where it's understanding those different audiences. So the person that has a lot of experience of delivering performance reviews and all the different types of conversations, they very much need the process. So last week I had a bunch of office hours and people would sign up for office hours. And for them it was focusing on maybe, okay, what's the process? How do I do this? How do I deliver feedback? Where does it need to go? Versus the new time managers. And even like I would call like the middle managers where they have maybe 5 years of experience. It was role playing the conversation around, okay, I need to have this difficult conversation. Let's do it. So I'm like, go. I'm your employee. We'll jump into the situation, actually give them more of that like safe place to be able to practice and start getting the confidence. This way they go in front of the employee. It's not the first time. Because just like the employees probably have anxiety around the performance management process, and they know a lot of these changes are coming. Like we've announced a little bit about the title standardization as well as like roles and how we're doing all this different stuff. But the managers also have a little bit of that like, okay, I don't want to fail at delivering this message to the person, because they know the importance of if we do this right, we're going to create this culture of growth of how we want to grow our people and develop the capabilities long term.
So you've actually rolled out or used the change quest methodology in two prior organizations. I'm just curious kind of how you've used it in the past and what benefit you've seen in using that framework.
Yeah, and we're getting close to doing it again and starting doing the next organization, which is really exciting. And it iterates a little bit every time, depending on the organization or what's the best fit. But when I think of like any of the learning programs that we're doing, a lot of it comes with building self-awareness, whether it's a leader or the individual, because then they can better perform on their job. So one way I've definitely used the framework is becoming more conscious or brain aware, right, of what you're doing and why you're doing it and where it's actually coming from. So I've seen a lot of differences in people. If you look at like individual contributors, if they're going through any sort of change or doing things, they know like, okay, this is me in this situation. Maybe this is why I'm acting this way. Now I can use the strategy. But before it was just like, okay, I don't know why I'm frustrated or I'm angry or I'm having extra levels of anxiety. They didn't have that opportunity to step out and see themselves, kind of the like a step outside, like watching their conscious self make those specific decisions. I will say, like from a leadership perspective, we use it a lot with making sure the leaders are strategic about how they're implementing a change and knowing that, hey, it's not a one size fits all. Everyone's in a different place. Everything's a little bit different. Even the conversations around like, what's the bandwidth of change? Because people have gone through a lot of change over the last half decade and like understanding like, okay, who's at their max and can we delay this a little bit? In most cases, we haven't won that battle, but even like having people understand the numbers of changes people are going through what type of change it is, have made a big difference. So I would say a lot of the change quests or even like methodology around the brain science of people going through change is filtered into onboarding. A lot of ways that we build psychological safety and building opportunities for people to fail and or learn on the job as they go. To we're doing a merger and acquisition where this person yesterday didn't even know they were going to be working for another company, and how are we going to help them manage that individual change, but also their leader who's going through the same exact change may or may not in most cases have known about it. How do we help them and lead them through that actual change in the acquisition?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, change is a skill like any other skill, right? So we can teach people a framework, we can give them the skill set, we can have them practice. And I think that's always best is to embed change management or change training into the organization before you're in the middle of a big gnarly change and everyone has the emotions for that change, right? And then, the reason why we have content for executives and then managers and then employees is because everyone's going through it, but they're responsible for a different part of it. And if we can get all those pieces aligning, you can really accelerate that adaptivity and resilience.
And I've also seen where we were just focused on leaders. And a lot of my early work that I've worked with, a lot of your content was very focused on leaders. And then the leaders would have all this language and it was great for them to work together. But then that language didn't filter down or they couldn't explain it. So language is only powerful if we all have this common language and what goes into it. So I definitely see a difference in how people are approaching it. And you mentioned a little bit about just the emotions. Like we have emotional intelligence training built into a lot of our personal growth programs and helping people manage and know what emotions they're going through, what their triggers are, which is a big part of the Brain Aware program as well.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit more, like when you're working with others, how do you navigate motivation for change, right? Because some folks are going to be like, yes, we want this, and they're driving it, and others are going to be really resistant to it. So tell me a little more about how you identify that motivation and how do you move people to become more motivated for change?
Yeah, I think part of it is just the recognition that everyone's in a different place, going back to that people centric example and saying wherever they are, it's okay. And even that motivation may change. Like one day you might be walking with a purpose because you understand the why and where we need to go. Other days you might be digging in your heels because there was a setback and you're like, why don't we just go back to the way I used to do it? So I think it's a combination of individual coaching, whether that's working through the people managers, because at the end of the day, the people managers are the most influential in the leading or managing the change or finding out what they use. So making sure they know the why. So they have the desire to help their people to change. But sometimes it's understanding like, here's what I just have to do as an individual. Here's my why or what's in it for me to go through it and being able to communicate. And then that's at the goal. So definitely a lot of that, even having a map of here's where we are and here's the vision, right? And everyone usually gets tied into the vision some shape or now, even if you're like, okay, I can see how my understanding, here's the why, here's my purpose, and understanding how I go from here to here, that makes a huge difference. A big part, and we're definitely in the remote first type based company. So I've been preaching and trying to bring up as much as possible. If you want people to be motivated, they're all going it through together, even sometimes trudging along together on whatever struggle it is. We'll build experience, especially in our mergers and acquisitions, where we have an entire month of welcome that we're working through and they're going through it together. And like, how are we moving their motivations of where it needs to go? And that's kind of like you give them that social connection. They feel a little bit safer that they can then talk up a little bit more. There's the psychological safety component. So a lot of different tools, and a lot of them I would say that we've adapted or we try to bring in, but it starts for me with the why. And I think at this point, probably everyone's seen the Simon Sinek start with the why and why it's important, but can you actually drill down into the individual and get their motivation? Because if that one people manager isn't on board or they don't understand the why, they don't have the desire to actually change, good luck getting the rest of their organization or everyone underneath. You're going to lose those people at the end of the day.
Related to motivation, I've been having a lot of conversations lately about, so we talk about how our motivation is determined by choice and desirability of any particular change. And I've been leaning a lot into the choice piece and helping people understand when change happens, if we don't have a choice, even if it's desirable, we're not going to be as, running towards it, as we say. And it's just, I don't know, for me, it highlights the importance of individual agency in change. I'm curious how when you're trying to get people on board with something, how do you create some individual agency so that you increase their motivation for change?
Yeah, early and often, we've all heard it, right? In theory, it's something that everyone's heard in their life, but harder to execute or have the execution on it. So if we can get in front of people and say, hey, this is coming, here's why it's coming, here's how it's going to help you, then that message gets cascaded down throughout their organization. So when it happens, it's not like the immediate shock, I will say. But the other thing I think that really helps is understanding who your early adopters are, who are going to be your change champions is a term that often gets used for this, and bringing them in to start like be involved with the change or the situation. Hopefully all your managers are part of that early adopters, but we know they're not going to be. You're going to have the people, and let's invite them into the conversation too, because usually they have a concern, it's valid. We just need to listen to the concern and help them understand what that concern is and how to mitigate it or move forward from that. So combination of the high level, where like how do we get everyone on board, the wide messaging, but there's also a lot of that individual listening and coaching, whether it's the champion and hey, how do I get this other person on board? I noticed so and so is struggling. You've known this person or you work closely with them. Why do you think they're struggling? And how do you think we can help bring them aboard or bring them along as well? So some things, maybe specific things we'll do, especially in like a merger and acquisition example, is have a weekly call with just those people managers. Let's walk me through your team. Like, how's it going? Where are they at? What's their status? Like, are they trudging along? Right, to your point, like, are they digging in their heels? Hopefully the trudging along gets to the point where they're walking a little bit more, even if it's uphill a little bit. But how do we move them to a little bit more of that positive direction versus digging in the heels is what we're trying to do.
I'd love to hear a little more just because you've done you have an extensive experience with mergers and acquisitions, right? That's a lot to have gone through. I'm wondering what are some of your best tips or your playbook for successful M&A? Because some of our listeners may be kind of approaching that for the first time. I'm wondering what you've learned in your journey of doing a lot of M&As.
Yeah, and I would say every M&A is a little bit different, and every company does M&A a little bit different. I've worked at companies where we do an M&A and 100% of the employees are go forward and they continue to stay with the company. And I've worked with other companies where 80% of the employees don't continue. But you need to do some sort of knowledge transfer to make sure there's business continuity. So a lot of it I will say is similar to what we talked about, whether it's like, let's assuming we're keeping everybody, is empowering them on like, here's the why, or here's where we're going, here's the vision long term, and here's how this is good for you. But also making sure that all the little things in their brain to bring in the brain science a little bit or being at ease. So we know they're going to have to develop new habits. So what do we have the framework of how we're going to get there and showing them the map that we talked about of here's how you're going to get, like whether it's an onboarding plan or an immersion plan to get those social connections would be like one way to do it. The other way is getting them in contact with people who have gone through the similar type of change and they have almost like a mentor and somebody they can reach out that's separate of like, say, a me who might be in like leading that vision or being like, get excited about that. Those are a couple things off the bat, but I do think the individual like calls with the people managers and helping them and guide them through the change is the biggest part because you might not be able to reach 100 people like individual have individual calls to understand, but I can reach 25 people. And if I have to have 30-minute 30-minute meetings through the course of that week, or as you're going through that first like 90 days to make sure like people are moving away from that, like digging in the heels or like to that, like I have the knowledge, I have what I need to do to maybe Justin's point. I didn't have a choice in this, but I'm seeing where this is going. I see how this can positively impact me. So I'm going to go along with it and give it more than just like digging in and kind of shrinking.
So, Bob, in Wired to Resist, Britt talks about the 4 brain structures that are activated by change. And I'm curious kind of how you've seen any one of those play out in change initiatives that you've been involved with in the past.
maybe we switch gears. We talked a lot of M&A, or at least a little bit of that. I think I did mention earlier that like a lot of the change quest stuff shows up in like different programs, even like onboarding. So there's a big focus in our onboarding, really, the first 90 days to make sure that people are given the space to create the habits, which is kind of the basal ganglia. I know I'm talking to the experts here, so hopefully I don't mess anything up on the brain science. I don't have the PhD. I've only learned from the best when it comes to that. So giving that, like also like even when any new person comes to the organization, like we talk a lot about psychological safety and how we build that as an individual or as a team. This way the amygdala is very happy. And it's not thinking like, I'm in danger at the end of the day, because we're not going to be able to get them to like learn something complex or think very high unless they feel safe. And then they have that space to kind of build the habits. The other thing is there's built-in structure. So I think we mentioned this as well, so that they can fail right away. Not like fail and just continue to fail. Like there's the safety net. We're helping them out with a mentor or a coach or somebody that is bringing them along the way. But it's like, hey, it's okay to fail, but we learned on it. And here's how we're going to do it. So hopefully the pendulum relaxes a little bit and starts being like, it's okay. I can take the leap. I can jump on it and do okay. So like a lot of it, and even if we don't call out like the parts of the brain specifically, it's making sure that we have these strategies and the tools that the parts of the brain that are going crazy and saying, I can't do this, or I'm afraid I'm going to fail, are calmed a little bit, and you can focus more on where they need to go.
You've passed your brain structure test.
I don't think you mentioned the basal ganglia, which I know is a big one for Brett.
You did. You covered that one. It's the two we haven't talked about are the interrhinal cortex, which is all about maps of physical space and social networks, and then the habenula, which is the brain structure that tracks failure.
Yeah. So like the internal cortex, like giving people the map or making those social connections. So everyone has heard of like, you've created an immersion plan of having them meet people. But once again, the execution behind that and making sure their managers are like, who have you met? What have you learned? How do you utilize the strength to help them build those maps in their first really 30 to 60, 90 days? So then they're set on the right path, which makes a big difference.
Great. As we wrap up our conversation today, I want to hear a little bit about what you're excited for in the coming months. What's something you're working on or that's got you kind of juiced up as you look forward?
Yeah. And if you probably would have asked me this question maybe a year ago, definitely not 2 years ago, it would have been probably a way different answer. And I know it's a hot topic. It's coming up everywhere with the concept of AI and what it means to help people learn, develop, ramp up faster. So I've been doing a lot of just like research over the last 6, 7 months, especially when I think about redesigning some of our programs and scaling it in a larger sense of like, how can we leverage AI to help somebody develop interviewing skills in that safe environment? So they're going to interview and the Habenula is like, well, I've never ran an interview before. I'm probably going to be bad at this. Like, I don't want to fail, right? We're getting rid of that sort of stuff or build the habits that make a difference. So I feel like AI is a big buzzword. A lot of people are talking about it. I don't think it's fully there on how far I want it to go. So I'm hoping in the next 3 to 6 months, either a vendor figures out the perfect scenario so we don't all have to create our own chat GPT bots and train them. And it's just like magic. And I plug in a couple prompts and everything works magically. But I think helping people get that opportunity to learn and develop skills on their own, as well as create those social connections, will make even more powerful experiences when we have those live sessions. I feel like a lot of my career, we had the live sessions as only live as possible. And then we went really far, like, okay, let's build e-learning. And the e-learning, okay, was effective, but doesn't necessarily like drive the skill. I feel like now we're getting to the point where we do have all the tools. Even though we've been talking about virtual reality, like now's the time, like AI can actually make it more accessible and take it to the next level. So if anyone knows and anyone's doing it, please reach out to me and let me know how you're doing it, because that's been on my brain for a while at this point.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Well, Bob, it was really great to have you on the podcast today. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure in our show notes we have your LinkedIn profile so people can reach out to you and find you. Are there any other things that you would want to share of, how people find you? I know you have a lot of extracurricular stuff in your life. And so I don't know if there's anything else you want to plug with us today.
Obviously they can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm not probably an active poster, but I am an active follower. And if somebody does send me a message, as long as it's not just all trying to sell me AI now that I mentioned AI, I will I do have networking meetings, so that's always a good thing at the end of the day. But obviously, if you're in Chicago, you're based in Chicago, and you want to look me up, want to get together, happy to do that. I do have a lot of extracurriculars. If you probably search the internet for me, you'll find all the other things, and I'll have my other life when I'm not helping develop habits and doing a little bit of brain aware learning and development.
Fantastic. It's so lovely to see you again, Bob, and connect. You and I have crossed paths for many years now, and I'm so honored that you're a client of ours and that you're bringing our training to your third company. So thank you for being such a great partner.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Brain Aware podcast. To learn more about Brain Aware training and our brain-based approach to change, teams, and all levels of employee development, visit brainawaretraining.com.